This episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. Michelob Ultra is perfect for more than just the summer heat this year, because not only is it refreshing and crisp with only 95 calories, but Ultra is also the official beer sponsor of Team USA at the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Celebrate every point, race, and moment with Team USA and Michelob Ultra for the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Stock up on Michelob Ultra and cheer on Team USA. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2024 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, we are back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com podcast, where Josh is off on a well-deserved vacation, so he'll be back again next week. I think he gets back tomorrow, maybe. But we've got lots going on here, and we've got Eddie. We're in the conference room today. We got Eddie. We got George. And we have a special guest from the wildly successful family business. Joe Castiglione Jr. jumps on the mic. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me on. It just worked out, strolled right in, and then
You're here to prepare for your guest this week, which will be Roy Williams.
We're very excited, very timely. Just got inducted into the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. With the season starting, camp rolling around, defensive expectations, no better time to bring on than one of the greats.
I love the show you guys did with Mark Stoops. I thought it was funny. I haven't had a chance to talk to him a lot. And, of course, you're talking to a Stoops. You talk to one Stoops, you talk to them all, basically. They all kind of are the same. I mean, to some extent, kind of like you and your dad. I think, you hear you talk sometimes, you're like, oh, that's his dad. It sounds just like him. But, no, you guys did a great job with that podcast, and I really enjoyed it.
The mannerisms of all the Stoops, yeah, it's just in their DNA. It was a great time talking to Mark. If you haven't watched that, I'd recommend you watch it. It was hilarious. I mean, even at one point, the lights turned off, and he was like, oh, got to go over there and turn them back on. But it was
I left that in. That was pretty funny.
And it's fall camp, and so he took some time to speak with us.
It was the first day of their camp, and I mean, I can't imagine many coaches doing that.
Not at all.
I guess that's what the power of the family business is when you share blood with someone, you can,
Exactly. He can't tell his nephew that he can't do it today. And we had to change times a little bit, and he worked with us. But he was great. I mean, got a couple questions like who was the best Stoops college career of the brothers. And so that was interesting. I mean, great time talking to Mark. And then hopefully next couple of years, OU will be playing them against them.
Let me just ask you real quick. What do you think has been, one, I guess it's two different questions. What's been your favorite show so far? And what do you think's been your best show so far?
Funny enough, I think the best show was Mark Stoops. I mean, it's 20 minutes, really talking to a sitting SEC coach, one with connections to Oklahoma. Isaac and I are improving. We're getting better, and I thought that was just all around a good show. My favorite show, and probably one of the most wildly successful, was the Brian Bosworth.
Yeah, that was great.
Favorite one, I mean, speaking to somebody with a persona like that precedes himself, I was kind of intimidated. That was the only one that was kind of intimidated before I got on the mic, and then it turns out he's just the nicest guy around. I was talking to one of our buddies.
I think my favorite is probably the Venables boys, just because I could only imagine how cringy that was for their mom and their dad to watch some of those stories being told.
Not only them, but former staff members. We didn't oust any names, but there's a golf cart story about, they may have gotten a hold of keys to a golf cart or
doing donuts on the practice field, just ripping it up. I mean, my God.
It's amazing.
I thought the Stoops boys were the terror, but it was the Venables boys.
I want to know if Brent watched that episode.
Ask him.
I might. But he'd probably be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you have to get him where it's not just a giant scrum of people, probably.
Yeah.
There was a number of current and former staff members that were like, thanks for not ousting me or throwing me under the bus for letting you guys do this or that. And then I spoke to my dad. He watched the show, and he was talking about, he remembers exactly when they had to replace the weight room floor from the flood.
He talked about it on the unofficial 40 when he came in here. So.
Yeah, he remembers it really truly. He was just there like 10 minutes before.
He said he was working out up there right before it happened, and he left, and then he went home, and they called him 2 hours later, and the place was flooded.
Yeah, no kidding. But no, a lot of great episodes. We're getting better. But yeah, Boz, Mark Stoops, just even some of the other ones.
Gerald McCoy was great.
I mean, there's a reason why that guy is, exploding in popularity in the media world. I mean, that guy is well-spoken. He's got personality, and just his love for Oklahoma is unmatched.
Yeah. All right, the cross promotion is over. Joe, you can stay with us, though. I know you're going to have to go here in just a bit to start prepping for Roy when Isaac gets here, but not burying the lead, not trying to bury the lead, but George, let's move to it really quickly. You broke the news last night that Jayden Gibson had a knee injury in practice. MRI schedule waiting to find out, if it is indeed season ending, which I go ahead and just run with it and tell us kind of what you know and what you've heard.
This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday. And you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action. Make your Sundays more magical. And also, YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
I mean, that's basically it.
Thanks, jerk. You just gave it all out.
Well, I don't want to try and be doctor. I really don't know. There's been a lot of different speculation on what exactly the injury is. I will just say it certainly didn't sound good what happened. Now we'll see. MRIs will obviously reveal what exactly the extent of the injury is, but if they do lose him for an extended period of time, it's just a massive blow. And that's a guy that, Eddie and I have especially talked a lot about him, really kind of going back to the coaches luncheon, when Joe John Finley said that that's a guy that he thought people weren't talking enough about. And then you think back to the spring, and the one guy we kept hearing in the spring was Jayden Gibson, was becoming Jackson Arnold's kind of go-to receiver. So, and that's a room that, as much talent as there is in there, it's starting to look a little thin when you talk about Farouk coming back from injury, which it sounds like he's pretty close to 100%. Andrel Anthony coming back from injury, which I still think his timetable's probably sometime a couple games into the season. And now Gibson, who it sounds like, you could lose him for quite some time. It's starting to look like some of these other guys are going to have to step up.
It's exactly what I was getting ready to say is, I think that we would have all agreed if there was one position that they could sustain an injury here early in the, onset of the season or the preseason, that it probably was wide receiver. But at the same time, it's a massive blow to lose Jayden Gibson. And, I think that we'd all agree that he's probably not going to be available for the rest of the season or for the entire season. And I just think it's going to be rather interesting to see who kind of steps up in that role now. Does it add a little bit of pressure to Nick Anderson to be kind of one of the guys here, especially early in the season? And, I think that it's going to be one of those things that we're going to look up and all of a sudden it's going to be September 21st and they're going to be getting ready for their first SEC game. So there's really not that much time to, kind of get this thing put together.
Well, and look, I don't want to get into, saying that I have concerns, but we did get to go out Monday morning and watch some practices. And to me, Jalil Farouk looked normal. I mean, I know Brent said he's at 90%, and he expects him to be full go at the start of the season.
I think it's also, we need to clarify, that injury that he suffered in the spring is not one that typically hinders a player from coming back and getting back to their full speed. Whereas, I think I know where you're going, Andrel Anthony, the ACL is
just watching. The first, like we get out there and it's stretching lines and it's warm ups, and so I'm taking pictures and I'm like, okay, let me get something of Andrel Anthony because everybody wants to know, how he's doing, and I was taking the picture first, and it was like I put my camera down. I just kind of watched him because I hadn't seen that type of a knee brace before.
Yeah.
And I asked Gabe Eichert about it, and he said it's just a stripped down version of what the offensive linemen wear, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but he just looked like a guy that has been struggling. Like, you could, I don't know. I don't want to read too much into that, but he just didn't have a lot of, there wasn't a lot of energy seemed coming from him. He was at the very back of the workouts, and he's still hurt. I mean, he's still coming back. So I wonder how far out he really is after seeing him on Monday. Maybe that's not fair, but just watching the guy, it made me think he might be further away than we think.
It should be said, too, based on track record. Are we sure it was Andrell Anthony that you were looking at? We've misidentified guys before.
that was Makari Vickers and Gentry Williams, all right?
Okay.
And
just making sure.
I don't believe I saw
I really didn't
Makari
spend
Vickers.
a whole lot of time over there with the wide receivers because they were on that far field after they broke out of the team stuff. And it just, I don't know, I didn't really get a good eye on him.
I went and watched him for a second, and he looked fine to me. I mean, he was making cuts, but again, they're not going full speed in these. It's it's like a short 5-yard out that they're running. I mean, you can't tell. I also noticed the knee brace. It was definitely one that I haven't seen either. It's kind of a unique thing, but with those type of injuries, it's just going to take quite a bit of time for him to kind of get his legs back underneath him and trusting it. Because I think physically he's probably feeling fine. I think it's more of a mental aspect of it.
Yeah. And again, it's probably not. I'm sure the guy's been through the ringer. I mean, from what we know, we've had visitors all of a sudden. From what I was told earlier, like he's had a cleanup surgery throughout this process. Like there's something that wasn't perfect the first time that he had a surgery.
Who was that, Eddie?
He apologized for parking in our parking spot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
nice.
No doubt. Very nice
I
gentleman.
have, okay, so we have like paid parking spots here to explain. So people don't read. I mean, apparently a lot. And
he thought it was part of the Sooner Club.
Oh, okay.
I think
Again,
people just see
reading.
Sooner and then it just kind of is like, okay, I'm getting ready to run up there. I'll be up there for 5 minutes.
We have people come in all the time that's like, is this the Sooner Club?
A lot of people in and out. A couple people today. A couple people this morning.
But so anyway, I have this kind of passive aggressive, I think it says, we don't want to tow you, so please don't park here again. Or we don't want to tow anyone. Because Eddie's been towed. We've had that story.
Yeah, that was like the first day that we were here.
It's not fun to have someone take you up to a place that looks a little shady and give someone over $200 to get your car back.
Yeah, it's not a good process.
So pay your tickets. Anyway, back to just the impressions on Monday. It's not fair. I'm sure the guy's been through the ringer and mentally, probably as much as physically. And I think that's probably his biggest battle coming back is just the mental side of it.
Yeah, and I think having a setback, I'm sure did not help him mentally. He had to. I think they had to go back in and kind of give him a scope again. So, those are tough situations. So, I think that you just have to be patient with him and just hope that he can be back to his normal form at some point. I don't know when that is. I think a lot of people have circled the Tennessee game. I think they're going to be really, really cautious with him because you can't. Because I saw some people are like, well, they need to put the gas on, getting Andrell back now. It's like do not rush somebody back from an ACL. Like let him take as much time as he needs.
Wouldn't somebody like a Javonte Barnes be example 1A why you don't do something like that?
Exactly. And I think they have some young guys that can step up. I think Ivan Carrion is somebody that we've heard about this camp that could maybe play a little bit. JJ Hester, who's now been in the program a while, and I know that we're all like, JJ Hester, really? He's had a good fall camp, and he's a taller guy. He's a fast guy. Like I think that he has a chance to see the field. And then Brennan Thompson, and I know Brennan Thompson is like the exact opposite type of player that Jayden Gibson is, but I do think he's somebody that can find a role on this team and play quite a bit. So they have other guys. I do think it's fair to say over the next 3 weeks, make sure Deion Burks is like in bubble wrap.
Joe, let me ask you, you played at OU, you coached at OU. You've seen guys go through that, like having major knee injuries. Does every guy handle it differently just from the mental standpoint? Or is there a pretty good plan in place with the trainers and the staff that kind of can help push guys through that stuff? I mean, I had, it's not the same level, but, I had rotator cuff surgery in junior college, which is like being in a third world country, getting rehabbed. Like, you had to do it all on your own. Like, they gave you keys to the workout room so you could go up and get your stretchy bands and stuff. Like, here, though, you have so much support, but does it still take a toll on guys mentally? Guys handle it differently?
Without a doubt. And I think, and then obviously they deal with it physically. I mean, everybody's genetically different, so they're going to respond a little bit differently. And so the training staff has gone through so many of these type of injuries that they have a roadmap laid out for them, and they have a physical therapist and a trainer, and then individual ones that go through exercises with them every day. And so, but to be quite honest with you, it does wear on them because, you're still going through your workouts. You're not doing the same thing. You might be doing upper body if you have a lower body injury, and then you go in the training room and spend 2 to 3 hours worth of treatment. And so it wears on them. So for a guy like Andrell, who had another scope, who might have set him back a little bit more, it might wear on him a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think George is right in terms of the timeline might be a little longer than you think. I think Tennessee might be a little optimistic, but it might be the reverse of his season last year. And, you might see him by the Texas game and so it wears on them. And so every guy's got a little bit of different attitude. I don't know completely Andrell's history of past injuries, but I mean, I bet he's dealt with it, with a professional approach and attacked it. But an ACL injury is still going to take a toll on the guy. I
mean, you guys mentioned Javonte, and everybody was on the outside of that last year. I mean, he talked to the media, Eddie, this week, and I think it was surprising that he didn't even seem to blink when the question was answered, like, did you think about transferring, or how are you still here? Like, behind the scenes, they obviously were managing it in a way that he felt, comfortable with, and maybe not at the time, but it goes back to the spring game. Like, you had the footage of him talking to DeMarco, and then he didn't do anything, and everybody's like, wow, this is weird. And everything about it seemed weird. And I was watching back the Texas game last night on YouTube, and like the start of that game, it's like Tawi Walker and Marcus Major getting all the carries. And then you see Gavin. I mean, you forget about how last year played out. Like, Gavin Sawchuk came in that game late to run a few plays here and there, and then eventually he gets healthy and becomes the guy. But, it's like they've done a good job, at least with Javonte last year. So if there are some mental hurdles for Andrell Anthony to come back, I think they do take it slow with him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that, like, the Javonte Barnes stuff too, kind of is starting to become a little bit more crystal clear on just exactly, or at least maybe be able to form an opinion about kind of, I guess maybe a hypothesis or something about like what actually happened. And I just think he rushed back, never was able to get back to 100%, and I think it really affected him mentally. And I think he lost a lot of confidence with what he was doing, and probably a little bit of frustration as well in terms of how he handled it in coming back, and then also just not being able to get back to what he knows he can be. And I'm back in. I think that Javonte Barnes has become maybe one of the top 3 more interesting guys going into the season for me, just based off the last couple weeks.
And I don't think this staff is stupid. Like, if they thought that Javonte Barnes didn't have it anymore, they would have let him leave and gone after somebody in the portal or whatever, because they have other guys that they really like.
They basically told Tawi, like, we don't have a scholarship.
Exactly. Like, if they wanted to keep Tawi, they could have and said, sorry, Javonte, like, you don't have a scholarship here anymore. Like, that could have happened. Like, that's the way the business is nowadays. So I think that there's still a lot of belief in Javonte, and I think of somebody like an Eric Gray a couple years ago, where obviously he didn't go through the injury stuff, but there was a lot of questions of like, can Eric Gray really be like a number 1 running back? And then all of a sudden in his third year, his last year at Oklahoma, like, it clicks. And I'm not saying that Javonte's going to go out and rush for 1,200 yards next year, but I do think he can be really good and provide them somebody that can do a lot of different things. And one thing that he is really good at that I think people aren't talking enough about is pass protection. Like, I think he's maybe their best pass pro running back right now, and that is something that is extremely valuable. And so I think that he's somebody that DeMarco trusts, somebody that they think can be, a dynamic player for him. And again, going along with Gavin Sawchuk and some of those young guys, all of a sudden you look at that running back room, you're like, okay, you feel a little bit more confident in it.
Do you see him as a running back 2 on opening day?
Oh yeah, I think Sawchuk will be on the depth chart 1, and then it'll be Javonte Barnes 2.
Who's 3?
Caleb Hicks.
Okay. I think he's earned it.
Yeah.
I mean,
unless
Taylor Tatum is just like blowing it up.
Sure, I asked that because I do think that like Caleb Hicks is one of those really interesting examples of somebody that we just forget about.
And you can't really point out like when he's been given an opportunity and just been like, that didn't look very good. Like,
no, I mean he hasn't. I don't think he has had an opportunity yet.
But the few he's had, you've seen sparks.
I thought he ran the ball extremely well during the spring, for sure.
I also think Tatum, as good as he is, and I think that he'll find a role this year, he still physically needs to get a little stronger to get to where he is
can hold up to the beating and all that.
And be a starting running back.
It's one of those things, and we were talking about it yesterday, just in terms of, I think it was one of the questions in your mailbag on Monday, was talking about how many snaps freshmen are going to get, who could make an instant impact. And I think that, like, automatically you think, the number one running back in the country, Taylor. And not to say, we've heard that he's been fantastic in practice. But at the same time, I do think that, something similar, maybe not similar, but same ilk, if you will, as somebody like a Devon Mitchell, they're going to be really, really good, like very good someday. I just don't know if it's going to be on September, 8th or whatever.
I also think that he's a guy that, again, maybe he ends up starting at some point this year. I doubt it, but I think he's somebody that they could use in different packages. Like they could bring him out on a third down and go empty and put him in the slot or motion him back to the backfield or whatever. Like I think he's a dynamic enough player that they're going to find ways to use him.
Who are you talking about now?
Taylor Tatum.
Okay.
That I think that's how they're going to utilize him. Like I don't think he's just going to line up and be the starting running back. Like I just don't see that happening. But Kerry, wanted to ask you this because Eddie brought it up, and Eddie knows the answer to this now. Can you tell me which top 5 true freshmen last year led the team in snaps in order?
5 true freshmen.
And I
should say, did pretty good on this.
You
test.
nailed it. You nailed it.
Can I look at the class? Okay.
Just look at the freshmen.
Okay.
Just look at the freshmen. You can kind of go through it. Or, I mean, I guess it'd be the sophomores now. The sophomores.
Okay.
And there's some redshirt sophomores in there as
Joe,
well.
you can give it a shot too.
There's one, maybe 2 that are
first one
fairly
should be
obvious.
The first 2 should be obvious, I think. Then it gets kind of hard.
In order?
That started. Or just played.
The most snaps.
Oh, I got you. Most snaps. And true freshmen. So like redshirt sophomores wouldn't be.
Caden Green's number 1.
Caden Green was number 1, yes.
Kobe McKenzie.
No. Kobe McKenzie was not a freshman last year. I'm talking about true freshmen, not redshirt freshmen. So these people, they'd be true sophomores.
Okay, there's so few sophomores.
True sophomores. There could...
Lewis, not Lewis Cart. Peyton Bowen.
Yep, that's number 2.
Samuel Masigo.
Nope.
Wow. I'm just going down the list here. PJ?
Yep, number 3.
There's not that many true sophomores. They have to be Jaquez Petaway.
Macari Vickers?
Nope. You're close, though, on the fifth one. He right position.
True freshman.
True freshman last year.
Have to think, too, played probably a lot of special teams.
Jackson Arnold, wasn't it?
Jackson Arnold was
Jackson's
4.
on it.
181.
So Macari Vickers?
Nope. Same position.
Same position.
Is he still here?
Played a lot of special teams.
Jacoby Johnson.
Wow.
It's number 5.
Oh, he did play a lot of special teams in.
At the end of that's straight offense and defense. I did not include special team snaps. Jacoby Johnson played a lot at the end of the season last year.
Yeah.
He was playing quite a bit at corner, but the question is who will be the top 5 this year? And I think that's where it gets really tricky because me and Eddie both agreed Jayden Jackson. Like I think Jayden Jackson has a chance to maybe start a couple games this year. Taylor Tatum.
I don't know if I'm there yet, but he's going to play a lot.
Yeah. I have Jayden Jackson, Taylor Tatum, David Stone, Reggie Powers, Eddie Pierre-Louis, but I only feel confident in Jayden Jackson in that answer.
Well, that was a pretty good look around, I would say, and it brings us some fresh perspective from one Eddie Radosevich, who I feel, I'm so glad that the guy came in and said that he was sorry for parking in our space, and Eddie immediately noticed there was a gentleman in the lobby, and because of his great vision, he was able to ascertain the individual before it got ugly.
He wore glasses too, and I actually asked him if he needed Enjoy Vision because he parked in our parking lot or our parking space, and he couldn't see the sign that said Soonerscoop.com.
We will tell you.
I could get him LASIK if he is interested. Enjoy Vision is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. Combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What Enjoy is doing for the Unofficial 40 listener, giving $400 off of LASIK. All you got to do is go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY withme.com, and use promo code U40 if you're interested in getting LASIK, getting lasers in your eye. $400 off. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
All right, let's reset here because we haven't podded since we talked to Brent on Saturday. I believe that was Saturday. Yes. It's all becoming a blur. George, reset us on the camp-wide. We talked about Jayden Gibson, but the camp-wide injury situation right now. I know you had Deshaun McCullough was missing some practices early.
Yeah, we saw him out there in a boot and on a scooter.
Brent's called it a little toe injury. Are they just having him walk around in a boot and just completely stay off the thing to get him back onto the field as soon as possible? I would probably lean towards that.
Is that how they treat turf toe now, Joe? Put you on a scooter?
I guess so. I just feel like a boot would take care of it, but
I really have no idea.
I haven't read WebMD recently.
I don't think it's turf toe.
I know we have a lot of guys looking that up right now, see how fast we can get an ACL tear back. WebMD.
Yeah, WebMD.
I think it's 8 months minimum, right?
Oh, yeah. Easily.
Yeah. I don't think it's turf toe, though, with him.
Didn't he have a stress fracture? Didn't at some point, didn't he have I don't know if it was at Indiana or so. Seems like he had a small stress fracture.
I really don't remember.
I think that the thing with Deshaun, I don't know if he'll be ready to go week one, but I also just don't know where he fits in this defense right now. And I know he was a really good player at times last year, but if he's really truly playing inside linebacker, I don't know where he's getting on the field. And if he's playing cheetah, then obviously, and I think that he'd probably be like one of those guys that, again, they'll have some sort of scheme that he's in on certain situations. But I just don't know what his timetable to return is, but to see him on a scooter and in a boot out at practice, that doesn't seem like a sign for him to be back on the practice field very soon. But again, I'm not good. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know.
Well, and it was interesting too, because we could see all the injured people out at practice. They told us that we couldn't take pictures of any of them. And I felt like such a moron because I'm walking around the field and all of a sudden I see Andy Bass. I'm like, hey, there's Andy Bass. I was like, people would love to see a picture of him, as good as he looks right now. Looks like he's really making some progress. And so I'm standing there taking pictures, and Hauk's like, you can't do that. Mike Hauk, yes, it wasn't his fault. It was my fault. I was just like, when they issued that thing, you can't take pictures of people, I seriously, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, if we see somebody go down in practice, we're not allowed to film that. And there's somebody's writhing around in pain. I never even thought about a kid that got hurt in high school and was rehabbing and wasn't all the way back. But it did. I just brought that up because I know you covered him a lot, and I believe you were there when he got injured.
Yeah, I was at the state semifinal or the state championship against Lincoln Christian. I've actually heard. I ran into Andy. I think it was about a week ago, and he said everything was going really well. So he was running vertically. He just couldn't move horizontally. I think more than a month ago.
Okay.
So he's been, I think the road to recovery is, it's gone quicker than I think even he thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I think Zion Raggins was doing some stuff individually. Nobody necessarily from a too deep standpoint that I can think of that maybe Deshaun's the only guy that really is truly missing time right now.
And the other, freshmen like Daniel Ekinkumi was out there, he was out there doing stuff, but he wasn't full go.
Same with Troy Everett.
Yeah, Troy Everett was.
Troy Everett, sure. He was suited up, but he wasn't.
He had a big brace on, didn't he? Still?
Yeah, I think so. So I think he's still probably a few weeks away.
I don't see him being ready at the start of the season.
No, and that's if we want to get into
playing doctor again. I feel really uncomfortable just playing doctor and also psychologist on the show so far today.
Yeah, I don't know what everybody's injury is, but if we want to get into it, I do think it's a true battle at center between Josh Bates and Branson Hickman,
which is fascinating for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, because of what I think we had kind of heard, or not even kind of, what we had heard during the spring with Joshua Bates. And then, obviously I think that there was a lot of people when, Branson came in, and we talked about it on the YouTube show, just kind of thought that he was the heir apparent there for Andrew Raym, that he was going to come in and start from day one. And I don't think that that's necessarily been the case.
Well, remember, whenever it was kind of emerging in the spring, everybody was like, why isn't Josh Bates making a move? Like that was kind of the question that everybody had. Like, here's a guy that, everybody expected to just kind of ascend eventually, and it just hadn't happened. So I guess it's not super surprising that, he's battling.
Well, I think physically he's there. Like, Josh Bates physically is, ready to do it.
It's kind of one of those things of like, which way is it, glass half full or glass half empty? Or do you want to celebrate the apparent jumps that Josh Bates made during the spring, and now he's maybe finally ready to win this job? Or is it that dire of a situation that Branson Hickman hasn't been the guy that everybody thought he was going to be?
Well, there's a reason he was at SMU.
Right.
I
like,
think
which way do you want to look at it? Do you want to? There's two sides.
It's the positive side, because I think Hickman has been exactly what they thought he's going to be. He's very technically sound. He's not the biggest guy out there, but he knows what he's doing. He's a smart guy. I've heard he's been a leader among the offensive linemen. I just think Josh Bates, it's maybe starting to click a little bit on what his assignments are on every single play, pointing things out, reading defenses, like everything that goes into being a center. I think some of those things weren't clicking at the start of spring. And we heard it from, Brent told us at the end of spring, like, Josh Bates took a huge leap. And I think we're starting to see that now in fall camp.
And I think we talked to Josh probably midway through spring, wasn't it? And he talked about just needs more experience. He needed more experience to get more comfortable at playing center, because, center is a position that you're going to have to think a lot. And I think that he was just uncomfortable and kind of almost thinking too much rather than being comfortable with what he's doing, confident with what he's doing, and then reacting.
Here's the other thing I would say with the offensive line. You're seeing a trend with some of these guys. And the trend is that these guys that have been in the system, been in the program, are Bill's guys, are becoming somewhat of the front runners in some of these position battles. Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor, those are two guys that I think have really stood out. Homegrown guys. Josh Bates, you're hearing really good things about. Heath Ozeda. Like, there's a chance, there's a world in which at some point this year, 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen are Bill Bedenbaugh recruited players from high school. When you have Josh Bates, Heath Ozeda, Jacob Sexton, and Jake Taylor, and then I think Fabechi Wiwu has pretty much locked up the right guard spot. But like, that's not to say the transfers aren't good players. I think that the light is maybe coming on a little bit for some of these guys, and I still think Branson Hickman's going to be the day one starter. And I think that there's a chance that Jacob Sexton starts at left guard to start the season, and Michael Tarquin starts at left tackle. But I do think that these guys, you don't want to. I think everybody's just assumed that the whole offensive line is going to be all these transfers. I just think that some of these other guys are starting to really step up and kind of develop.
I can throw out one of my theories that sometimes goes so poorly that people just kill me. But I'm wondering, like, if the Bates thing isn't also because he's used to practicing against the Brent Venables defense, which we all know Brent doesn't hold back on anybody. With all the blitzing he does and all the stunning and all that, like, Joe, do you think there's a chance like that it's just kind of swimming still for a guy, even though he's a veteran? Like, the stuff that Brent's throwing at him makes him kind of, he's hitting a learning curve a little bit?
I'd agree. He's not quite a veteran, but I think that's sometimes why you hear these guys coming out of fall camp of third, fourth year guys are like, oh, they're having a really good fall camp. They're really coming along. Season rolls around. You don't see them on the field itself, because there comes to a point that you're practicing against the same guys 20, 30 practices before you kick off in the fall, and you start to memorize the plays. You pick up tendencies. It's like playing the same team over and over again. So you guys have guys that are smart enough to pick up on that, but they may not be physically gifted enough to play on Saturdays. So maybe Josh Bates is kind of taking a little turn like that would be. So I think that's part of it. And I think with Josh Bates and the offensive line, I want to say, if we learn anything about Bill Bedenbaugh, the lineup, barring injuries, is not going to be the same on week 1 than it is week 3.
Yeah,
and so
he's going to tinker.
Yeah, and it's not going to be probably the same way on even the third drive. And so if they trot out Josh Bates, I don't think people should burn down and say Hickman's, behind schedule or et cetera. So
I think the 3 guys that I'm going to go ahead and say maybe I'm going out on a limb here. I think the 3 guys you can count on starting on this offensive line.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Well, one's going to be Wee Woo.
Yep.
I'm going to say Heath Ozida because no, really, you seem to be such a fan.
I mean, I think there's a chance he starts, but he's not one of the three
Jacob
that I'm talking about.
Sexton's gonna
Jacob
be one.
Sexton, that's 2.
And you're going to say Josh Bates to throw in a curveball.
Jake Taylor. I think Jake Taylor's going to start.
Just looking at Jacob Sexton yesterday, or when we talked to him on Monday, I think he looks great right now.
Yeah.
Bigger than maybe I've ever seen him.
Yeah, and he's
kind of the leader, isn't he? Like him and Jake Taylor are kind of like I don't know if you want to call them cornerstones of the offensive line room, but they're certainly 2 of the most veteran guys.
He looks like Jacob Sexton looks like he ate Kurt Russell's son.
Don't know who that is.
He was the guy that was the captain, the bad Captain America after in the Falcon and the Snowman.
Can't tell you.
Or Falcon and the whatever. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He was also in that. He was the quarterback in Jump Street 22, or
22 Jump Street.
22 Jump Street.
I don't know
when he went to college.
I'd argue about the offensive line. I'm more encouraged that they have confidence to move Jacob Sexton into the inside of the offensive line than anything else.
Joe's a natural in this pod, just totally saying sorry, Carrie. We don't give a shit about what you're talking about.
I can't believe you don't know Kurt. He's a very famous actor.
I know who Kurt Russell is.
Yeah.
But I just love Joe just being like, yeah, we're not talking about this anymore. That's like half of this pod.
Just ignore the old man. He's learned it, yes.
What were you saying, Joe? Move Sexton inside?
Yeah, I'm more encouraged by that than anything else that for out fall camp, because I really feel like guards, you can hide a guard, but you can't hide a tackle. So if they're willing to put a guy with tackle experience like Jacob Sexton into the interior, that shows me that they might have something on the outside with Taylor and
Tarquin. Yeah. And I think that it also speaks to, again, the confidence in Sexton. Like, Eddie, you said he's kind of the leader of the group.
Yeah.
I think it's also clear that he's probably the most talented of the group, because to be able to say, oh, well, we could start him at left tackle, which is probably his best position, but we could also move him to left guard and he'd be really, really good. Oh, and also, if we really need to, we could play him at right tackle. It's like, okay, how many guys can do that and say, okay, you can play him at 3 different spots? I think that speaks to Sexton's development and just how talented they think he is. I'm starting to get to a point where I'm believing in the offensive line.
Oh,
not to the point where I think they're going to be good.
You can't heel turn like this.
I think we have exaggerated how bad we think they'd be. I think they're going to be just fine.
I don't think that we've exaggerated it. I think that everybody outside has exaggerated how bad this thing was going to be, because every time that we talked about this, even going all the way back to the spring, it was, I don't think this is going to be a bottom of the barrel offensive line in the SEC. I think this is going to be a middle of the road. And if you want to get to where Oklahoma fans feel like this program should be, it needs to get better. Yeah. I think both can be true.
I feel like it's similar to the Jax Arnold turnovers in the Alamo Bowl. It's kind of like the last taste in your mouth. And so people might have flipped on the TV and watched the Alamo performance and be like, I think the defensive line is going to eat them alive in the SEC. And so if that didn't happen, I'm not sure we're having quite this conversation to the same level.
It wasn't necessarily awful. Like, I went back and was cutting up the video from the Alamo Bowl. They certainly didn't pass protect well, but Gavin Sawchuk had a hell of a game. I mean, he ran for 136 yards.
And I think they're going to be able to run the ball better this year. Like, I think that is something that has been a huge emphasis. And Seth Littrell's offense is also just more tailored to kind of what Bill Beatenbow likes to do. I feel like I've said that a million times, but I don't know. I'm just starting to believe, because it's just small things like, I mean, we heard it in the spring, Eddie, a lot, which was that the offensive line was just getting destroyed at some points.
Yeah.
And they weren't even able to run plays. That has not been the case in the fall. It sounds like the offense is having some really good days. It sounds like the defense has been dominant at times, especially this week. I've heard the defense has kind of controlled practice, except for today, actually. I just heard from some folks that said Wednesday's practice, the offense was pretty good, especially maybe in some goal line situations. So that's good stuff. Like, that's not what we were hearing. Like, you want to hear it. You don't want to hear that one side of the ball is just dominating all of spring or fall camp. Like,
one side wins one day, the other side comes back and wins the other.
And that's what you're starting to hear with this. And that just tells me that and if that's the case, then the offensive line is doing its job to at least an ability that the offense can, make some plays, which was not always the case in the spring.
Sure. and be able just to function.
And it's just one of those things that the offensive line is just one of those things that takes time. Like it really truly does, especially when you have so many different guys that have never played with each other. Like that is just going to be something that takes some time. And we've said it, over and over, but it might be a few weeks into the season. They have to figure it out by Tennessee, though. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I don't know, where do you want to go? I mean, from Monday, stuff that kind of stood out to you. I didn't go over to the defensive backside. That was the only thing I didn't really see.
He kind of does look like Jacob Sexton might have eaten him. He kind of looks like him.
That's Kurt Russell's son.
Okay. I think it's the facial hair that really gives it off.
He's in Everybody Wants Some, isn't he? He's the hippie. He's the hippie.
Yes.
In Everybody
I forgot
Wants
that's one
Some.
of your favorite movies.
Yes, yeah.
Did anything stick out to either all three of you just from Brent on Saturday? I mean, he talked for 28 minutes. I didn't feel like it was like just groundbreaking.
The stuff at the end was really interesting to me.
About the facility stuff?
The recovery and just the overall facility. It's almost like him saying, I know we're really into all this NIL stuff and that's important, but we can't lose sight of the fact that facilities still are lacking. I mean, the practice fields and stuff like that, I think just dragging everybody down to the rugby fields, I think he hates that. He hates the inefficiency.
Sounds like he wants to move the indoor to where the Switzer Center is.
Yeah.
Which would be,
he basically said attach it right here.
And I'm like, I don't know if they could do that, but it'd be pretty cool.
I think if you left it up to Brent, Lindsay would just disappear. It would be.
I mean, if you left it up to Brent, I think campus would just disappear and it'd just be football.
He might be right. They should think about doing that. I meant just in terms of upcoming season stuff.
Yeah,
I mean the facility stuff. I don't know. I guess maybe I just look at it and it's like, yeah, sure. I'm sure a coach wants new facilities.
Yeah.
I thought
but that's always been part of the plan too. Eventually, is to get new facilities.
I thought the Woody Washington stuff was interesting.
Yeah.
Because we've talked a lot about him. He said that his primary position is corner, which I think is intriguing. But he also then kind of didn't backtrack it, but was like, but we've also never had this many good corners. So we're kind of moving Woody around where he can play. Like, I think you're going to see him a lot maybe in the slot, playing some nickel, because I know that he wants to play some of that. And I also think he'd be really good there. So I thought that was interesting. The Javonte Barnes stuff, which we've already hit on, was interesting.
The thing about Woody, to me, though, that gets overlooked is he's a damn good cornerback. I mean, I know he's not first-round NFL draft pick. He found that out, and that's why he wants to move around. But it's been a long time since OU's had – it's been Zach Sanchez since OU's had a cornerback that's been that consistent, I think.
I'd second that. I think he just kind of gets overshadowed because he's been here so long, and
he had that one bad game against TCU when they got their heads kicked in.
Cornerback gets overshadowed all the time because if they're doing their job right, they're not going to have their name called a lot. And so Woody kind of falls into that bucket. But if they have multiple guys, he's able to slide in the slot. I think that's nothing but a positive for the defense.
Trey Brown might have fit into that role.
Yeah.
He was just on really bad defenses. So you don't really necessarily think of any of those guys from that late Riley era that were just exceptional almost.
Trey had elite closing speed, and so sometimes he was able to cover up.
Sure.
Some of his.
Yeah.
Well, what was that thing that he ran down that Baylor receiver? He hit 23 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Which, side tangent, then I'm going to hop off. But you always hear about fall camp coaches throw out, this guy ran 22 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. It's like, you watch the Olympics, 100 meter, the fastest Noah Lyles ran was 27 miles an hour.
Wow.
So just take that in consideration next time you hear a coach say, we had a guy at 22, 23 miles an hour. It's like,
it's insane. That's like 4 or 5 miles faster.
Correct.
That's insane.
So
that's crazy.
Take it with a grain of salt.
All right, we'll let you get out of here, Joe, and start prepping for Roy Williams with Isaac, who is in the building as well. So appreciate you jumping on and being a part of the pod this week. I mean, I know you were continuing, but I stopped you in the middle to talk about Woody.
Yeah, Javonte, we've covered that a lot. We don't need to get into that anymore.
It didn't come up on Saturday, but am I crazy or am I just completely sick in the brain? I've kind of bought, and I know this opens up a bigger discussion. I've kind of found myself thinking that Jaren Kanic's going to have a pretty good year. And that is based maybe on nothing.
I'm on record. I think I said this
just a hunch.
Yeah, I think I said this last week. He's pretty much right where Danny Stutzman was at this point of his career.
I just that just opens up the gateway to the conversation at linebacker that they literally are in a good spot because they have so many guys. I just don't like who's coming off the field. It's like, do you want Jan out on the field? All right, well, you're not taking Danny off the field. Are you going to take Kip off the field? Are you
I don't think they get better by taking Kip off the field. I think the best lineup is Kip and Danny on the field, though.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I just don't know how they're going to play all these guys on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we could, and it's a good problem to have. It's a problem that Oklahoma specifically hasn't had in maybe a decade, just in terms of so many guys that names you can run through.
And see, I don't have any worries at the linebacker position. It's are they going to be like the potential is there for them to be the best linebacking group in the country. Like, that's how good they are. My biggest question is about the defense right now. What's the pass rush going to be like on this team? What's the ability to get pressure on the quarterback going to be?
Absolutely.
There's so much potential there, but there's not a lot of production.
No, there's not. And I mean, even somebody like even somebody like an R. Mason Thomas, I don't think would necessarily be an example of a guy that has had just an exceptional career to date. But I think that there's a lot of people that feel like he's going to have a good year or have a better year, or maybe his best year in Norman.
They need a difference maker on the edge because I just think that they've been kind of lacking that. I mean, Ethan Downs is a really nice player, really good player. You know what you're getting down.
He's a good complementary player to a really good pass rusher on the other edge.
But this team doesn't have a Obo Okoronkwo or
an Eric Stryker.
Or Charles Tapper even, who I guess didn't necessarily play edge all the time, but like they don't have one of those guys that's like, oh, when he's on the field, he's got a chance to get a sack.
And when we say we don't know if they have that guy, we just can't sit here and say it on August 7th that they have that guy. Maybe they do. Maybe Caden Wooler's going to come in and be that guy. Maybe Danny Okoye as a freshman is going to be that guy.
Maybe PJ finally emerges.
PJ's had a good fall camp from what I understand. I mean, it's just until you see it though, it's just like, do you really believe it? And the other one, like you said, Danny Okoye, I wonder if he gets on the field this year because he's such a raw talent, but I think they can do some things with him where maybe it's 3rd and long and they just put him out there and say, just go. Go get the ball. And you don't have an assignment. Like, you are just going off the edge and you're going, or you're stunting or whatever, because I've heard that he's not getting, I don't think, any first or second team reps, but he is just terrorizing the third team offense.
I feel so old for saying this, but, I think back to like, okay, what's Brent's history? You remember the 2000 National Championship when they took Jimmy Wilkerson and, was it Dan Cody? And just put him in as rush-ins in that game? They'd never played that before. I think Jimmy Wilkerson was like a linebacker the entire time that he was at OU up to that point. But they were true freshmen. But it's because they were playing
Winky, who was going to not move at all.
Mobile, immobile quarterback.
Statue.
Yeah, and they knew they could just throw them out there on long pass yardage downs.
Yeah.
So he's done. I mean, in his career, he's done stuff like that.
I think that it is kind of calming in a way that when you do look at all the different guys that they have over there that we think that they could use. I don't have any doubt that they have one of the best guys in the country that can figure it out and how they want to be able to use them.
Yeah, I mean, inside outside is, and we've talked about it a lot. If he is that good, it's going to change your front. I mean, it lets you play 3 down linemen.
Yeah, and you need, obviously you need some of those guys in the middle, whether it be a Dominic Williams, whether it be Jayden Jackson, or, obviously DeJoun Terry, Grayson Holton, any of those guys, they're going to have to be really good as well. It all starts up front with these guys.
And then, against the run, that's the other thing. It is the trenches, but I think even the bigger question mark is the outside guys.
I think that the interior, you feel pretty good about stopping the run. Like, I think DJ Terry and Dominic Williams, Jayden Jackson, I mean, these guys are good
plus
run
the linebackers
stuffers.
you have.
Right. I don't know if they have someone on the interior defensive line that's a great pass rusher. And so it's going to be left up to, having stunts or having somebody on the edge who's just a monster that teams have to put 2 blockers on. Like, does OU have that guy? We just don't know.
We think David Stone could be that guy, but we don't know.
And again, it depends on what kind of defense they're running. Like, I just don't know. I think they're going to come up with some different schemes where they've got different types of bodies out there on certain situations.
It's kind of funny how we look at it though, because we talk about Jayden Jackson and David Stone like they've been around here for 2 or 3 years almost to a certain extent, but then we had that conversation right at the beginning where we're talking about the freshmen and the snaps, and it's like I think that those guys are going to get quite a bit, and I think that they will. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me.
I was trying to think like if you could just get, because the defensive line was solid, but I was almost to that point like if you could get this guy to play like that guy, and I was thinking of we could never say his name forever. That you switched from defensive end into defensive tackle.
Jonah Lulu?
Yeah, like if David Stone could just give you like Jonah Lulu type production, that to me would be a pretty good option for interior pass rush guy.
I mean, Jonah played, I think, the second most snaps of any defensive tackle last year. So I don't know if he can do that, but I do think he can give you 150 snaps this year, which would be great. I mean, they want a 6-man rotation there, and I think it's pretty clear that Dominic Williams, DJ Terry, Jayden Jackson, and Grayson Halton are 4 of those guys. Who's the 5th and 6th guy? I have no idea. I lean towards David Stone and either Ashton Sanders or Devon Sears,
or Marcus Strong, maybe.
Well, Marcus Strong wasn't practicing on Monday. He was in shorts and was off to the side. So I don't know what his injury situation is, but I just wouldn't put him in that group right now. So again, they need Grayson Halton to be a guy. Like they need him to be somebody that they can count on,
and he could be. I mean, it's just, can he do it consistently?
Right, and that's the same thing with the defensive end conversation. It's like
just in terms of talking to people through the first, I guess now 5 practices. Have you heard much of Grayson Halton and kind of what his production's been here in the early part of August?
No. Not really.
Great. Not really. No, I didn't know. I didn't know if you had.
It's still early in camp, so it's hard. And I don't think they've even really gone full pads yet.
Talk to Todd Bates.
I'm pretty sure today was the first day.
Yeah.
Why won't you just talk to Todd Bates and ask him?
Well, we don't get to talk to position coaches. Also, I will say the scrimmage that was scheduled for Saturday, I believe, is now going to be on Friday. So hopefully we'll have some notes up on that.
And I would just add that I think this was a decision that had been made even before Jayden Gibson's injury on Tuesday. So I don't think it's not connected to anything. I really don't know why they're moving everything up.
Is a cold front coming Friday?
I mean,
or is there some rain?
It's air quotes cold front. It's going to be like 94.
Yeah. I think it's going to get to like in the 80s.
Which is better than... I don't think it's going to get that chilly yet. Or I guess cooler quite yet. But yes, it is supposed to be somewhat cooler. Not 103 or whatever it is today. The last couple of days have been miserable around here.
What did you think about... going back to Monday, what did you think about Jackson Arnold's comments about Jeff Lebby versus Seth Luttrell?
I would say just first off, I thought Jackson, that was as comfortable as we've ever seen him.
And by the way, he has leaned up so much. I mean, he
looks really good.
He's low body fat. He's muscular. He looks fantastic.
It's just kind of one of those natural progressions of somebody that looks like he's getting older. He just looks like he's growing up a little bit. He doesn't have that kind of that baby face look that he had as maybe a freshman.
I also learned that I offended George by saying he got skinny.
Well, that's just a different term. Skinny versus lean is a totally different. Skinny is like...
Skinny's like what Jayden Gibson came in at.
Yeah.
He was skinny.
6'5", 180, that's skinny. Yeah.
Jackson's a fairly well put together kid. He reminds me...
He's been thick since high school.
Yeah, absolutely. He reminds me a little bit, and Blake was a lot taller, but he reminds me a little bit of Blake Bell.
Yeah.
Blake was obviously a lot bigger, but Blake's a very
just a large human
guy.
being.
He's a large guy. Definitely not as tall, but Jackson kind of has that same build as opposed to some of the guys that we had seen here over the last however many years, going back to Baker and Kyler, obviously a little bit of smaller statured guys, even as compared to Jalen Hurts, who was a lot taller, I would imagine, than Jackson, but I think maybe Jackson might be a little bit thicker.
Then Jalen?
Yeah.
I don't know. Jalen Hurts was pretty thick.
He was pretty thick, yeah.
I never looked. Jalen was thick. I would definitely give you that. I just never looked at him as like he's just another massive dude.
But Jalen wasn't as long.
Jalen is a big dude.
He's so big, and that's like, I don't. He was banged up that year, and it like nobody really noticed it a whole lot. But I remember he came into a press conference, his hand was all taped up and stuff.
Yeah,
like he took a beating, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
dog.
And
Definitely.
he didn't flinch.
I mean, you have to be a big guy to do what they do with the Eagles and get in those scrums every game.
I would say that Jalen just isn't as long as Jackson is.
Jalen was 6'1", 220 at Oklahoma.
Damn, I thought he would be a little bit taller than that.
Jackson is 6'1", 211.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Jalen
They're
Hurts
similar.
is a massive
They're similar.
dude.
Yeah.
I for some reason, I would have said that Jalen Hurts was a little bit taller than that. It kind of surprises me.
Back to Carrie's question about Latrell and Jackson. It does seem like they have a really good relationship with each other. I'm just curious what the offense is going to look like, and I'm working kind of on a story about it. I think it's going to be very similar to what Kevin Wilson ran kind of at Indiana, which I'm hoping to talk to Kevin sometime this week for a story. But, I think that it sounds like they're still going to keep a lot of the same concepts that they did under Levy, because I think that Jackson's really comfortable in that, and it sounds like Jackson's really comfortable with what Seth is running. So I don't know. It sounds like it's gone really well. They want to throw the ball deep. They want to get Deion Burks the ball in so many different ways, it seems. I'm curious to see what that looks like. But it sounds like it's going well.
Better not be jet sweeps, or people will lose their minds.
They're going to run. They're going to run jet sweeps.
If it is successful, though, I don't think anybody will say anything.
That's always kind of the half the time they ran those jet sweeps, it was to the wrong person. Like it shouldn't have been to Gavin Freeman or Drake Stoops. It shouldn't have. Honestly, I don't know if they had a guy last year that it should have been to. But if you're giving Deion Burks the ball on the edge, I'll take that. I'll take Deion Burks in space.
I've got
every
a couple
day of the
plays
week.
Specifically for that in NCAA 2025.
Was it any surprise to you that Deion Burks made Pete Thamel's top 50 freak list?
Yeah, you mean Bruce Feldman?
Or Bruce Feldman? Yeah. Sorry.
No, I mean the dude is a freak.
Yeah.
And did you see the stats he said he put out there about him?
No, I didn't.
I'll have to find it real quick, but his bench press and squat is absurd for someone his side. Yes.
Wow.
Interesting. Well, and actually, that doesn't really surprise me as much, though, because I remember going back to even the spring game, I was fairly surprised how physical Deion Burks was after the catch. He's not just a guy that was throwing over the top, and they did that plenty of times, but he had a couple throws or grabs underneath that he was seeking contact.
Listen to this. He benches 400 pounds.
Deion Burks does?
And squats 540. You know how insane that is at his size?
I want to retract
He's 5'9", 190.
I want to retract my statement on was there even any surprise? He should have been higher.
Yeah.
400 and 500? That's insane.
Yeah. For reference, I think that, remember that video that went viral of Jalen Hurts a few years ago squatting? I believe that was 600 pounds. Deion Burks,
I think it was 500.
Was it 500?
I think it was 5.
Well, either way, Deion Burks is doing 540. So he's in that same range. That's insane for someone his size.
That's
and then benching 400 pounds. I mean, we saw him up close. I mean, remember when we saw him at Media Day and our first reaction was this dude's a little rocket.
Yeah.
I will say this. I mean, my biggest takeaway, and I think we probably said this before, but just the overall look of this football team on both sides of the ball. Maybe not, it's not like they don't have an Orlando Brown type offensive lineman or a Phil Lodeholt type guy, or even like a Duke Robinson back in the day. But just overall, defensively especially, at every position, they have dudes that look like dudes. I mean, and Brent has really elevated the talent level in this program.
It sticks out to me more so on the defensive side of the ball than it does the offensive side of the ball. You look at some of the guys that they have over there, even somebody like a Kenai Walker or somebody like that. They've definitely seeked out guys that the Oklahoma just hadn't had around here.
Well, it was like I always remember the Cortez guy that was from Arizona.
Johnson.
Cortez Johnson. Like he came in and he was back in those days, he was an anomaly. Like, you didn't see. Now you have guys like that all over the place, and then you have big guys, and then you have
think about just the size at cornerback.
The Lewis Carters.
We were just talking about Trey Brown, how drastically different his body style is than maybe anybody that you could compare to. Now, like Woody might kind of be somewhat, quote unquote, the small guy. Des Malone's a big guy.
Yeah.
I think there's also, and we'll have the Doom Pod eventually, I'm sure, but I think there's some optimism inside that building that they're going to be better than a lot of people think.
Yeah, we kind of thought that walking away from Brent on. He's pretty guarded about stuff right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's guarding against the rat poison. That's what I think I told Eddie that. Like, when you were talking, after I watched the press conference, I was like, he knows that they're a little giddy in that locker room, that they know that they have something. And he's trying to protect them from getting too high in the sky.
And I think, again, they're optimistic. And I think we all would say that we're maybe higher on them than other people might be across the country. But they got to have a lot of things go their way, too.
But here's the thing. We see it every day. Not every day, but we see it more than anyone else. We talk to people more than anyone else. And we know how bad it's been. Like, we know, especially on the defensive side. The defensive side, it's been trash forever. And what we see now is so different. It's like you could talk about coaching and all that stuff when Mike was here. They just didn't recruit well enough. Like, they didn't have enough players.
Yeah.
Now you've got Brent recruiting, you got Todd Bates, you got Miguel Chavis, you got Emmett Jones. I mean, all these guys that are great recruiters, they're not just relying on, one person to recruit. Like, everybody's recruiting their asses off. So it shouldn't be a surprise that, you have a defensive coach. He's rebuilt this defense. He knows what he's looking for at every position. And it looks for real. It looks like a real deal.
It has the makings of one. I do think that,
Now, what does that compare to at South Carolina and Kentucky and, all the other places in the SEC?
More so LSU,
right.
Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri.
But I guess I'm thinking, like, is it superior to a South Carolina, to a Missouri?
I see what you're saying.
It's not going to be to a Georgia or an Alabama. It is probably not. I'm not going to say it's not close. It might be, somewhat similar. It just might not have the depth or overall talent, from top to bottom on the roster. But, like, if they got to a place where they separated themselves from even the lesser teams in the SEC. Got a Cubs home run?
I think that's what we're going to find out, Kerry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just think that's what makes it so interesting, is because I think that they feel like this is certainly the most talented team they've had under Brent. And it might be, I was trying to think about this. Do you think this team is maybe more talented than the 2022 team? Lincoln's last year, or 2021 team, Lincoln's last year?
Yes. I think from top to bottom it is. I think the roster's better.
And I think so too. Now the thing that I think is holding everyone up is just the schedule. Yeah. And I think everybody agrees that this team is super talented.
Yeah.
And that Brent's done a great job rebuilding it. It's just like that schedule's just so brutal that it's like, does it even matter?
It's incredibly tough to ask this hypothetical, and it might even be a stupid hypothetical. But if this team was playing in the Big 12 this year, would like 11-1 be the kind of the standard?
Yeah, I think so.
It really is one of those things, though, too. Like I think I was on like an autoplay on YouTube or something, sitting in the living room, and some SEC podcast came up, and they were like, we're predicting the upset of Auburn over Oklahoma because they've never seen anything like Jordan-Hare. Like,
I've been saying it for a month. I think the Auburn game is maybe one of the biggest games for OU football.
I think that's the first measuring stick game.
Yeah, 100. Well, I think Tennessee is to a certain extent, but going out on the road.
But you're at home against Tennessee. Things could snowball for you.
You've played in games of those somewhat that magnitude. I know Jackson hasn't, but the program just as a whole has played in those games of magnitude in Norman before, whether it be Tennessee the first time around or Ohio State or wherever. The Auburn game is kind of one of those things, like you have to find a way to get out of those first 2 weeks of SEC play 1-1 somehow, some way.
I just love what this is.
That would obviously be fantastic.
I love what this is setting up for the fan base, because they're hearing these 6-6 predictions, and They're going to be leading up to that Tennessee games. It should be pretty. Tulane, we'll see, but it should be convincing wins, especially Temple to open the season.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be lathered up when Tennessee comes in here. It's going to be electric. I mean, it's going to be Campus Corner. I mean, it's going to be shoulder to shoulder down here on game day on Saturday.
It's the biggest and it's the best home schedule Oklahoma's had in over a decade. I mean, it's a fact.
And it's why it's so great for Oklahoma fans to be in the SEC, even though it's tougher. It's not Baylor and TCU and Kansas and stuff that wasn't really all that attractive.
The other crazy thing, and just talking about the schedule, and I'll give credit because I heard him talking about it, but Dean Blevins brought up a pretty good point the other day.
I thought
on the
when his phone
hour.
wasn't going off.
When the phone wasn't going off, we're working on that. But at the same time, it's kind of crazy, and I guess it hadn't dawned on me. OU, out of their first 6 games, plays truly one true road game, and it's the Auburn game because you have Dallas down, Texas down in Dallas, obviously. Right. It's kind of crazy that they have so many games in relatively comfortable spots to begin the season through those first 6. I think it's almost imperative that they start 5-1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think they need to start 5-0.
George has them 2-3, which I thought was interesting.
No, I think they're going to start 5-0, and then that Texas game is the big one.
Yeah, but you have to get through Auburn somehow, some way. Tennessee and Auburn, and then obviously it sets up for the back end of the schedule that if you're talking about getting over 7.5 or whatever, you got to find a way to be 5-1 because then everything makes it a little bit easier to get over to the other side of 7.
All right, there's lots more to come. We probably won't have any more access this week to practice. Maybe that's possible. There will be another practice report that's going to tape tomorrow. And we'll also have some stuff up on YouTube. Of course, the family business getting ready to tape. And we'll have something up on Jayden Gibson and his injury situation. Just a short deal for you. But we were sitting in the office yesterday going over the schedule. The recruiting report will be back on Mondays. So we've got the schedule set up, but Josh will be back. We'll have a recruiting report shortly after he returns. So I would say next Monday, plan on the recruiting reports to start flowing on a weekly basis. Tuesdays, we'll have your Brent Venables press conference breakdown / first day of media practice report.
Practice report, yeah.
Yeah, and then Wednesday we'll have the unofficial 40 along with family business. Thursday we'll come back with a game day preview. And so YouTube channel will get popping here on a regular basis. So we're really looking forward to that. Also, got to check out the website. Just like last night, breaking news coming out on Jayden Gibson. We'll have all the breaking news from camp. So stay tuned on that. You can go sign up for $1 and get 2 months using the promo code OU1. It's the only promo that we offer, and otherwise you're going to have to pay the full price. So OU1's that promo code, $1, you get 2 months. And jump on board. It's a great time. The SEC's coming up. Guys, any last final words before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. It does feel like this is like the weekend, I feel like, when NFL truly ramps up with preseason stuff, that it starts to really, truly... No, I didn't.
I didn't think it was that great either.
I thought it was just I thought it was great. It's good to have it back on, and it was cool to see Caleb and kind of the inner workings of Chicago Bears. I think
Eberflus is cooler than I thought he was.
100%.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought that there was like a lot of I don't know. We've seen this over the last couple of years, and I think that it was stuff that Hard Knocks had to basically give into was teams are saying, we'll do it, but you're not going to put in a bunch of our real team stuff, behind the scenes, actual football stuff.
It seems like the only thing they had were a couple of conversations between Caleb Williams and the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I thought it was good. I mean, hopefully they give us a little bit more. I do like seeing the Bears, so we'll see. I'll watch all of them.
Yeah,
but I was kind of like you. I got about halfway through, and then I looked up and I was like, oh shit, I didn't even watch the last 25. I was just messing on my phone and listening. Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it. We'll be back again next week for another edition. Appreciate everybody listening. Josh will be back with us as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time right back here on the Unofficial 40 podcast from Soonerscoop.com.